Before really going into repurposing, I feel it's all about also collecting the content you have in a company. Because I feel I see a lot of companies, they have a lot of content flying around in different departments, but only marketing is summing it all up, what they have. But sales has things, customer success has things, product department has content, which you can all use for your marketing, of course.
Welcome to the 4 a.m. report. Let's face it, we all have to market. Large or little, it's harder than ever to stand out in a cluttered space of one-size-fits-all and copycat marketing moves. Welcome to the 4 a.m. report, a micro-podcast that brings you valuable conversations with people on the marketing dilemmas keeping them up at night. Here are your hosts, contrarian marketers and creative clutter cutters, Susan Diaz and Will Lamont.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the 4 a.m. report. We've been talking a lot about podcasting itself lately on our podcast, the 4 a.m. report. And one of the things we've been talking about is mixing up the formats and, kind of introducing new styles or formats of episodes, I guess. And we've been talking about the idea of a panel of experts coming on together, almost like that TV show, The View, where you've got a bunch of different people coming on. They all have one similar target audience, overlapping target audience. It's a great way to amplify your networks, meet new people, have a collaborative masterclass type session. So we thought we would do one of those today. And what we're going to talk about is the content audit, to kind of steal a little phrase and tweak a phrase that RuPaul says in Drag Race. Content audits are fundamental. So we're going to dive in and talk about that. Susan, I'm going to throw it over to you to introduce our quote unquote international panel. Yes, people, international today.
Yes, we'll love it. We love it when we cross the pond and speak to people from different places, and this is awesome. Yes to everything you said about panels and new formats, Will. And, we've got three awesome people who can speak to the idea of content audits today. And really quickly to introduce our panelists. First, we have with us Amber Khan, who's the founder of Amplifyology, a repurposing content marketing agency in London, UK. Hi, Amber. Welcome.
Hi, Susan. Hi, panel. Lovely to be here.
And then we have with us Romina Buchle. She's marketing manager of a firm called Aioma, and they have the tools to help marketers with content audits instead of finding what you need. Hi, Romina. It's nice to have you here.
Hi, Susan. Glad to be here.
And finally, we have with us Kira Tchernikovsky. She's a marketer for small businesses, and she terms herself international marketing consultant, which I absolutely love. Such a statement of the way that we've become global. We might be based in one place, but we deal with everyone. So you're right here in Toronto with us. So welcome.
Thank you. Awesome company.
Yeah, so we like to set off by asking people what keeps them up at night, folks. And I thought maybe for the purposes of this, we can go around the panel and share a perspective, a pet peeve, a rant, something that, we wish was more commonly known on the audit front. And so maybe I'll set us off a little bit and say that one of my pet peeves is how much net new content people tend to create. Everyone starts from scratch, and I can see why, because there's a real attraction to the idea of creation. Why wouldn't you want to stick around and do the creative stuff if you could do that all day? So that is one of my pet peeves. I'm like, and to borrow a line from Will, he and maybe I'm talking and saying what he's going to say, but he often talks about I have a podcast for that, because after having 120 something episodes of this podcast, there's almost no need to start from a blank page. That's my pet peeve. So I'll just throw to the next, and then you can each throw it from there. How about Romina? You go next.
Yeah, so what really bothers me is that a lot of people think content auditing is just one thing they do one time and then they forget about it. They don't do the work afterwards. They forget about the Excel list they created and about all the rough diamonds they already have. They just would need to polish a little bit. So I feel there is just so many potential lost, and also so much hate towards content audit, which is not really the way you should look at it, because it gives you so many great ideas how you can manage with less effort to get a lot out of it.
Kira, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So what I will choose, and I have like a list of pet peeves, is not focusing on what really matters, just creating content for the sake of the content. And like I'm there myself, like you look at my LinkedIn feed, it's all over the place. And I know that's not right. So if you know why you're creating or auditing or repurposing content, then you can measure it and just step by step do what needs to be done in order to achieve that goal. And that's what matters. If that's bring you leads, that's one story. If that's just for brand awareness, that's a different story. But I don't think that a lot of business owners and marketers treat it like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's so true. Amber, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I mean, similar to what other people have already mentioned, the other ladies, but the biggest one that my biggest pet peeve with content marketing is what similar to what Kira mentioned, is using content out of context, especially when you're working with clients, right? And you want to do the best job for them, right? And if we don't start from the place of context, it's basically saying, well, I'll just throw something out on the web and hopefully it will work. Hopefully it will get you the kind of attention you want, and maybe you'll gain some followers and so on and so forth. But and I find, especially if the clients come from a non-marketing sort of background, it's hard to explain to them that the audit is required in the beginning to ensure that they may have a lot of content, but we have to sort of go through an audit to select content that is contextual, and then do work with it, create your goals, repurpose it, whatever, but start from there. So for me, that's my pet peeve.
And a lot of people, so when you sit down to do a content audit, kind of just a 101 here, basically, you can, of course, a lot of people want to see the numbers, how things did, the metrics. They look at that side of it, right? Maybe they want to optimize user experience or SEO or things like that. Then there's the whole other side, the qualitative side, which Romina, I think you mentioned that term in our green room. Talk to me a little bit about what kind of qualitative things, when you sit down to catalog, organize, look at all of your content. Yes, numbers. Yes, great, wonderful. We want to know all of that sort of stuff in SEO. But what about the qualitative side? What kind of things do you look for when you do that?
So yeah, what I really look into is how a person who comes to my website, for example, really goes through the funnel. So I do not only look at one page he visited, but like what's the path he's taking and where may he be going to another path of my other business leaders and not my website any longer because he didn't find any content. So where is kind of this biggest bottleneck in my process, which a lead needs to take until he can consume kind of the content he wants from me. So it's all about kind of where does he bounce? How long does he stay on my website pages? How many pages in total does he look at? Does he come back after receiving an email or not? So all of those metrics, which you normally don't include in a content audit, are really, really important to me to just know, is it really the right content in the right place? And as Amber said, like in the right context of the search this user is going through. So if I can really help him. So it's all about the client or the lead or the contact, however you want to name it. And I feel that's also something you need to have in the back of your mind when you're going through a content audit.
And how often do you do that, Romina? Like that, what is the sort of frequency of looking at the numbers? Because, my thinking is sometimes looking at the numbers too often isn't the greatest thing, unless, like you said, you have a specific context and you're like, I want to be increasing content in bucket A or getting more people to come in for that. So how often do you look at it, and sort of like how often do you change up the things? Because if your numbers look bad in 2 weeks, you probably wouldn't change it right away, right? You would focus a bit more. Mm-hmm.
So exactly. I feel you cannot like change all the time and interact in short periods of time, especially if you're a small business who hasn't got that amount of traffic, because you need to have a sample size, of course. So I wouldn't really use it like on a weekly basis, but I feel like on a monthly basis, it's really, really cool to have a look into it. And what I always try to do is really go into kind of each stage of the customer journey and see how I can optimize this stage, or go into different topics and see how I can really nail these touch points in this topic area along the journey a customer takes, so that I really go deep into there and not like the whole picture. So not like this whole content audit of about 1,000 articles you might have, but really just going into some specifics, which I think is really an important thing if you do auditing, that you always know what you want to look into it before you do it, actually.
Very cool. Kira, when you're doing content audits, what are some of the key things you're looking for these days? What are you finding most exciting about the content audit?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's exciting, actually. You need to make it exciting, because if it's not exciting for you, it won't be for your audience. Yeah. So basically, I am constantly, and to comment on Romina's answer, I like doing content audits, light content audits ongoingly, because, I love interlinking content, because if you have content strategy, you probably would organically fill in that customer journey that Romina is talking about. So I am looking for what I think has worked, and I double check the numbers. Sometimes I think that something is working intuitively because you post content across channels. So if you don't have a robust reporting on that, that's kind of tough to bring it all together. So I check what worked, and probably I would test it out 3 to 4 times, changing the content or changing the format. And then I would basically try to talk to my audience, be it reverting to my current customer base or to my prospects, trying to ping them with that content that worked, either via a newsletter or when I'm on the sales calls, or just repurposing my content into sales enablement materials, because you design for your audience. If you see a repeatable pattern, you can optimize that. And that's what I'm looking for, right? Like if every business owner wants a predictable revenue stream into their business, it would be a shame not to know what worked content-wise and not to construct this content so that it just amplifies your success.
Absolutely. Yeah, Amber. I'd like to add something here. I'm not sure. I would love to actually know if any one of you have tried this or some version of this. I find that with larger companies, it's easier to find this data, as Kira was talking about, and Romina as well, that if they have a lot of traffic, we can from the data figure out, okay, what's working, what's not working. But for small businesses where we don't get much organic traffic, right? I find that, and this is something I've used, and I'm sure there are other ways to do it as well, is running ads. So like in our case, it's Facebook ads, and to a particular or training for the client. So whatever their subject matter is, right? So if it's in the shape of a webinar or training, whatever training. So what it does is that it does a couple of things. Well, firstly, because it's a long form content, so it's like an hour long content at the minimum. So if by running ads to it, we figure out very quickly that is this concept and topic resonating with their audience, and also if it does, what it helps then let us do is now take that big piece of content and repurpose it for different, not only different types of content, for various parts in the customer journey as well. So we can create content for top of the funnel brand awareness, as well as for sales content for if they have a sales team to use, would come out of all from that one big long training. Not all of it, but a lot of the content can come out of that. And if it doesn't work, it very quickly tells us that, okay, something is missing here, and we need to tweak a few things and run a different topic and figure it out. But I find it helps sort of cut that trial and error time to get to where we want to go very quickly. I would love to know if what others have done or tried.
I think you're making a good point about, not a lot of organic traffic at the smaller business level. And then how do you, and I know this is a terrible marketing word, but like, how do you test it at a larger scale and see if that idea works? What we find often in the smaller business space is that people use ads for conversion heavily. It's very like, I have this program, there's a specific date for whatever reason, and the close cart formal method tends to be pretty prevalent, the launch thing. So within that, I think it's relatively underutilized, this idea of putting money behind content for just getting it consumed, like putting money on the distribution just so that you can get eyeballs on it tends not to be common. But I think that's an excellent point that you've made there, Amber. Like, testing it like with pieces. And again, I think it's very important to say, we live inside the bubble, and I think maybe we've heard this message a lot, but it's important to say that, just gating things, trying to make people register for a webinar, and then trying to like say that, there's going to be no re-recording, that method maybe is not, drop it. Like, don't make someone give you an email if what you're doing is trying to test the topics and things themselves. Yes. So I really like that. Kira, maybe if you can talk to us a little bit about that, the ABM of it, like how while pipelining and putting material out from a smaller business perspective, how can they be looking into their vast amount of content which already exists? Because again, I think at this business level, people do really well with like, I need to keep a presence out there for visibility. I need to let people know about my programs. But then you sort of like, it's almost like the two parts of the brain don't fit when you're like, are you using that same stuff in your pipelining? So can you talk to us a little about that?
Yeah, and that's a perfect continuation and segue, because when people come for external help, be they marketers themselves or just business owners, they often come to me, to my organization, when they're like, hey, we're getting like hundreds of likes for our content on Facebook. Yes, amazing. So what? So they are coming when either they need more explanation and understanding how to convert those likes into the pipeline, and they have no clue how to do that. Or they are just creating content. And by the way, they can be investing into Facebook or LinkedIn ads or like Instagram. You won't believe how many traditional businesses invest into Instagram and say it works. When you start digging into that, what does it mean it works? It's basically, likes, awareness, which is amazing. And they cannot tie it to any pipeline because that's not documented, that's not tracked, that's not reflected in CRM. Like in best case, in best scenario, the salespeople ask, how did you find us over the phone, and hope that people remember it all. I'm not talking about multi-touch attribution, nothing like that. So what often I have to do is, yes, to explain them about account-based marketing and ICP's, ideal customer profiles, because different messages would convert different audiences. And if the customer, the client, is aware of the differences between the audiences, we would test those messages like in a really rapid, quick tests, be those paid or not. And honestly, more often than not, we find that virtual events would be a great test, speed test for that. Because what you do, you just convert those likes, you bring them into an event. And this can be a couple of events because the audiences might vary a bit. You just need to find a good topic, relevant, assuming you know your customers really well. And then you work with them between sales and marketing, if there are those departments, on working together and converting those people who are coming to the event following up properly, document it, and attributing success to this content marketing. And of course, usually they have that content ready. They have done events before. They have done white papers. They have done video case studies. They've got it. You just need to ask the right questions and dig that content and, adjust that to the platforms they're already running on.
Very, very good points. I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but recently we had a client who, we've learned to encourage clients, especially small business owners, to not always be on the creation side. Like, let's look what we can repurpose. Like you were saying, what can we pull? You already have this here. Oh, look, you don't need to record a new podcast episode this week because your bandwidth is low. We're just going to slap a new intro on it because you've already got that sort of thing. One of the biggest joys I get is when then the client actually says to me, well, wait, Will, I have this. We should be repurposing this, and I'm like, "Yay! My job is almost done." You're thinking like the efficient creator that I know you are. So let's talk a little bit about, and Susan mentioned this at the beginning in her pet peeve. Let's talk about that, getting out of the constant creation mindset, and really, and you see people doing this more and more with live events and podcasts and that sort of thing. Let's talk about the creation versus repurposing. Does anybody want to comment on that?
Okay. So before really going into repurposing, I feel it's all about also collecting the content you have in a company. Because I feel I see a lot of companies, they have a lot of content flying around in different departments, but only marketing is summing it all up, what they have. But sales has things, customer success has things, product department has content, which you can all use for your marketing, of course. So I feel like the first step you need to take is really going internally, saying, hey, I need those stuff, guys, and really also checking how you can get continuously to the content from your other departments and then repurpose it. I feel like that's the first step I would like to take there, because there is also a lot of potential just laying around.
Yeah, and it's
like
not
a
just
repository.
Sorry, I was going to say, and it's not just like people think it's the blogs, it's the videos I put out, but you're right. There's vast areas of content in all the different sections of a company's different platforms and departments. You're so right about that. Sorry, go ahead, Susan.
No, from a purely tactical perspective as well, like some sort of repository, like every company, and especially for our audiences who might have smaller firms, and the systems still exist within that. Like for someone, I guess we're an 8-person firm, and Google Docs tends to be our central place where everything is. And so the simplest of tactics is the search button, whether it's on your website or it's on your centralized drive of whatever type. You go and search, like, I don't know, for us, we're like, okay, you're looking for podcasting, maybe that's too wide, but you'll find like 300 pieces that show up. But if you're looking for like podcasting for accounting firms, it will show up. Like the power of a search button is undeniable, even if you have, very little actual categorization. So even just starting by the topic, I often say this to the writers on our team. It's like, don't start from scratch. Go to that piece and look it up and be like, what have we written for this person on the subject of retirement? And pull it up, and then you'll get a better view. So I think maybe if you can share some tactics with audiences for where to even get started with that process, because like we said, it's unlikely that there's no content. There's probably no system. So Amber, would you like to go first and talk us through some of the systems and tactics that you think people could think about?
Yeah, sure. It varies a lot if, depending on the size of the organization, because obviously larger organizations have huge amount of content, whereas a small business may just have a podcast as their anchor content that we're looking to leverage for their amplification. But in any case, I believe Kira touched upon it, is ICP is very, very important. I feel that a lot of times we're writing, or the companies are writing for so many different ICPs, and it gets so confusing. And I understand that they may be targeting, I don't know if they are targeting pet owners, but they may also be targeting cat owners. And so, writing for all these different ICPs becomes so confusing for your internal team members, for salespeople, for your customer success people. It is extremely confusing, because now when you do the audit, it's now your job to figure out, oh my God, all this content everywhere, who does it speak to? So first you need to figure out, the ICP, who is it speaking to? Then you have to figure out the topics for that ICP, and then you have to categorize them. And so there's a lot of work to do. And if the more ICPs you have, the more work you have to do. So you have to look at your resources. If you have the resources to do that, I mean, great. But if not, if it's like a one-person team, you have to then prioritize that. What are we going to do? What are we going to drop? Let's maybe not target 4 ICPs. Let's keep one in mind and use the resources and the content we already have that we can now use and then repurpose, and then maybe look to go into more ICPs later on.
Kira, did you want to comment on that as well?
Yeah, definitely. So I can combine what Romina said and what Amber said. So focusing on ICP by ICP, and again, ideal customer profile. And that can vary. If you're a fresh business, you might be torn between what is the best performing audience. So you can maybe choose 2 or 3 to test out with content, because probably you won't have budget to run paid ads. So that would be organic content. So you have to know where your audience is. So going ICP by ICP, I think it's a brilliant idea. And then you will have to nail that journey that Romina was talking about for that specific ICP, be that pet lovers or cat lovers, because otherwise you won't be able to measure. And for me, you guys are asking amazing questions. So I went to my notebook and I just categorized where the content might be coming from for small, medium-sized businesses, because I never categorized that. And what turned out is 4 main points that I might name. I hope that will be helpful for some. So one is spontaneous content. Hey, I have to write about that. And you jot that down and you do that because you just feel that's right. And then you find the ways to leverage that. Then you do what we discussed about. This is content strategy for the specific ICP. That's not spontaneous. That's planned out. That doesn't have to be huge. That might be just 4 content pieces to convert your ICP within a specific campaign, even call it campaign. Number 3 is what I have started to do lately is third-party relevant content, so which is publicly available. So let's take digital transformation. So much said about that, but there are those sources like boards of trade here in Canada, for example, who run those webinars with amazing experts that you are not that expert even. So that's publicly available. If that's an hour-long panel discussion, why can't you take that and do a quick bulleted post on that? That will be so helpful to other business owners. They don't have to go through the 1-hour thing, and you don't have to create that content. You just repurpose that. That's publicly available. And the last one, which is the toughest to crack, but this is super helpful for website rankings and for conversion. This is kind of user-generated content. When you are providing some services as a business owner, people ask you questions, same questions all the time. And then why can't you take those questions, write down the answers, wrap that in a very usable format, and use that as both sales enablement tool to convert your pipeline, but just also to establish your thought leadership, that you are open, you are really partnering with your clients, and you are providing that information that is relevant for all for free, just sharing your knowledge, and then people will come for implementation. So I know it's a lot, and ideally all 4 buckets would work together, but of course it's hardly feasible for small business owners, but at least the awareness and maybe choosing 1 or 2 to proceed with might be helpful.
Very cool.
It's a well laid out framework. I like that. Well said. A story on that, when you're talking about summarizing something and putting it out, I have a story for you. A few years ago, we wrote a piece. This was for a firm that ran defense events in the US. And at that point, they were talking about Veterans Affairs and how there was a major overhaul in how veterans programming was being done. And there was about 13 or 14 specific points that they had laid out for how this would change. And it was a really complex academic document, like, you can imagine what it was like. And they asked if we could help to do something with that, because this was the combination of the fact that that particular thing is important to them from an audit perspective, and newsjacking. This is like a thing at the moment. And so we wrote 13 things you should know about the new Veterans Affairs. It was quite a simple thing, like a 2,000-word article. That thing is by far the highest performing piece that we've created for anybody ever. So I think that's a really good way to be like, it doesn't have to be yours. And I think you put a whole other layer of ninja-ness on top of this, Kira. Like we were like, it doesn't even have to be new. You're like, it doesn't even have to be yours as long as you're allowed to use it.
Yeah.
It just has to be relevant. Of course, it has to be relevant.
Yeah,
yes.
Relevant. Even PR mentions, we had one client, G2 mentioned their company in an article, and theirs wasn't the only company mentioned. I think there were probably 8, 9 others. It was a list of them. But what this very cleverly did was that to use that as a top of funnel content to instead of telling people, we are great, we are awesome, come work with us, they just highlighted that on their homepage and probably ran ads to it to show people what G2 is saying about them, right? And today, I believe it's the highest converting content for them, which brings them clients, gets salespeople to book calls. That one piece of content on their website gets their phone ringing, and clients or prospects books calls with the sales team just based on that simple thing that they didn't even write, but they leveraged it, earned media cleverly for their own gain.
Very cool. Basically, just to chime in on that too, Susan used the term newsjacking. We found that something that's very successful for ourselves to easily get content out and get ourselves more visible. Every week, we kind of look at the marketing news and kind of pop culture, social justice, whatever piques our interest, and we bring our perspective to it. So literally, we are taking the news of the day, adding our commentary to that with a little bit of humor just to entertain people as well. And that's worked really well for us too. And it's because we both enjoy it. It's a really easy way to get content out. So I'm all for newsjacking and commenting on other people's things.
I mean, we can see that working so well on YouTube. A lot of YouTubers do great, produce great content using news hijacking as the concept, and their entire businesses are built on that, just on that concept, which is so clever. Wish I could do that. I'm just not that entertaining.
Oh, come on. You seem very entertaining, Amber.
Romina, so I know that you work for a software firm that specifically has an audit tool. So I thought maybe we can sort of call on you to give us some wisdom in that area. Like talk to us about tools, your own and others that you think might be able to help people with the specifics of the audit.
Yes. So thanks for drawing that line. Sorry, with analogies in English, I'm not so good. So about tools you can use for content audits, I feel like for most small businesses, the first thing to do is just crawl their own website and see what's coming out of there. So then you have this kind of first wow moment. Hey, there is so much content already flying around. I think there are some free tools like SEO Frog or SEMrush you can use for that as well. So there are a lot of tools who are already can do that for you for free in just some seconds. So you just have this overview of online content, of course. I feel you always have to take into account like the offline content you may already have, because that's often also this kind of gold things you are missing out on. Our own solution is really based on online content. So we just have this kind of tracking, a snippet where we then track all the behavior of your contacts who are going to the website, and just try to map it on your topics you are managing and on the customer journey. So like each topic, we will see which phase of the customer journey is having the most engagement and is working the best, and what specifics of the content is working the best. So there will be kind of this spider chart thing for each content page you have, where you just see like, do the people stay on your page? Do they click on the links? Do they interact with you on this content? Is it used across all the channels and such things, so that you always will see kind of in a snapshot of a second how good your content is performing without needing to go into all these kind of details and data and not nice looking Excel sheets, so that you just have this kind of graphical feeling about how well your content is really working.
Very cool.
I really like that. Really like that. This has been a fun conversation. I wanted to do a really quick recap of like some key takeaways that I think small businesses would do to focus on from an audit perspective. I think the first thing that everybody sort of agreed on is that need to focus on ICP, or your ideal client profile. It is tempting to be all things to all people, but just don't. Pick one or two. And in the process of picking those people, maybe the way to do that is to search for your patterns. And again, we talked a little bit about those patterns and trying to see where that is. And I think Amber's point about running ads for distribution to establish what those patterns are is worth thinking about. I know in this space, often people focus on ads for conversion. So that's something there. The third point that was pretty key, and this was a point that Kira made, was look beyond even just your own content into public domain expertise from other people who are in your field, not forgetting to bring in layers of news, audits and news as well. And then the fourth point and the last, which I think was an amazing point from Romina, which is that start by crawling your own website. Like, look at what you have, clean your house before you head off elsewhere. So thank you for that very, very awesome conversation, folks. This is amazing. We have to come back and talk about a different topic soon.
Yeah, we'll put everybody's contact information in the show notes. So if you're looking to find out more about one of our panelists here, you can. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. It was a great conversation on the often maligned, and people think it's boring, but it's not, content audit. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're losing sleep over a marketing-related problem, let us know. Drop us a line at cp.digital. Sweet dreams. Well, hopefully.